Welcome to Movies We Like, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
It is Pete Wright.
On today's episode, we have invited Mandy Kaplan, voiceover artist, writer, podcaster, actor, and producer of Miscast LA, to talk about Lasse Hallström's What's Eating Gilbert Grape, a movie she likes. Mandy, we're so excited to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm thrilled. Thank you so much. And thank you for pronouncing the director's name first. So now I know how to pronounce it.
Oh, well, I'm hoping I pronounced it right. I didn't.
Oh, no research went into that, Andy?
None.
Okay.
You know, I've just
Improvisational pronunciation.
I feel like I've heard it pronounced that way, like at the Oscars or something. So I feel like I'm 90% correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes. Well, thank you guys for letting me do this.
well, we're thrilled.
I mean, we're going to be talking about the movie, but I thought we might open with your experience doing the audiobook narration of Mastered by Malone. You have an entire catalog of fantastic audiobook credits, but I think Mastered by Malone is where I would like to start. Are you okay?
I'm fine. I'm just grateful that my mom doesn't know how to listen to podcasts. That was a book about a dominatrix, or it was like a cheap, not cheap, brilliant 50 Shades of Grey knockoff.
Yes.
About a
the cover is
sub and a dom.
Very abdominal, I would say is the word. The abdominal
I don't know that I've
cowboy.
seen the cover, but okay.
Well, you are missing out. You're missing out.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
we could start with, if we just make sure that link is in the show notes.
Absolutely. Well, yeah.
All my classy ass credits. That's what you pull up. Thanks, Pete.
That's because I love you so much, Mandy. I have to take you down a peg, just a little bit.
Fair enough. I'd like to see you try.
You say that. You say that, Pete, but now sales, after people listen to this,
I know.
Sales and downloads
Skyrocket.
for that book will skyrocket. So, see, you're only
the
helping.
title is just so provocative.
Yes. Yes.
Get that in my subscription.
Let's
yeah.
Well, let's dig into you and your career. So, audiobooks obviously is one thing, and that's a big part of your career is voiceover in all sorts of different projects.
Yes.
But you've been in LA for quite a while, and you've been working in the industry in many capacities. So,
Yes.
I guess how would you describe your journey into working in the production world as a whole?
Well, I am very lucky that voiceover has been my steady career for 20 plus years. And that
Fantastic.
supports the habit of writing and creating and acting and all of the other things that I endeavor to do. Yeah, I'm very lucky for that. And I think everything shifted when I had a kid. Spoiler alert, I have a kid. And before that, it was all about, I got to get my own sitcom. And I was in the game and I was going on exciting auditions at studios and meeting exciting people and booking the occasional guest star. And I was really in it. And then I had a child and the demand was like, put your newborn baby down and get to Warner Brothers right away. You have a callback.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't make that work. So
Right.
gave up that aspect of my career with the agents and the studios. And I focused on the things I could control, which are creating my own stuff and writing and producing. And it's much more soul satisfying, but a lot less glamorous than the good old days when I was, close to getting on Dawson's Creek.
Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
Oh my
Right in Pete's
goodness.
alley.
Yeah, I don't think an episode's complete unless we have a Dawson's drop. So thank you for knocking
You're very
that out.
welcome. I don't want to wait.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Well, this would, I guess, be the first complete episode because I think that is the first.
I think that's the first one.
Dawson's Drop. Well,
Mandy Fabian didn't bring up Dawson's Creek.
No, I feel like we were this close. This close.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting, and it's a hard decision to make, to kind of go through that process of figuring out, like, when you're wanting to be a performer and figuring out, like, okay, I now have some limits set on me. How can I redefine what I want to do so that I can actually still be doing what I want to do, but within these constraints? And I mean, was it a difficult process for you to kind of like navigate that after your kid was born?
Well, to be clear, I wasn't on my own sitcom, so I wasn't giving up a ton other than driving around Los Angeles all the time and getting
Yeah,
rejected. But
right.
yes, it's difficult because I also pursued musical theater. That was my degree and my
Yeah.
first love. Um, but the shift made perfect sense when I did create my show Miscast, which is now 14 years old, like my son, and it's designed to to bring joy and satisfy my soul. It's not going to make me famous. It's not going to make anyone famous, but all of those performers do it for the love of doing it. And in terms of Hollywood, I love writing. That's become my main focus. I love it deeply. I was just writing and telling my husband all about this shift I made and to make a brand new act work in my screenplay, and it gives me pure joy. We've come very close to selling some stuff, been in exciting rooms, and something big will break soon. But I try to take joy in doing it because you can't control anything beyond that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So, okay. So narrowing down to some of the specifics. So
yeah.
voiceover. I
Yeah.
mean, we've had J.P. Karliak, a great voiceover actor, on the show,
Yes.
and talked a little bit about that line of work. And what was interesting in talking to JP is that moment of a realization that he had where, oh, I don't also have to be like an actor in front of the camera too. I can just do voiceover,
Hmm.
and kind of like the great relief that was for him. And voiceover gives you a lot of other opportunities. There's, I mean, so many different things you can be doing in voiceover. What is it that you love about when you're working in with your voice as an actress and as an actor that still kind of fulfills your kind of those energies that you have for putting yourself out there?
Well, I mostly love working in my pajamas. I don't know if that's if that's what you meant.
That is
JP
exactly what I meant. No.
JP and I have very different careers. He is blessed and gifted to be doing animation primarily. So
Yeah.
he's a lot more creative than I am. I do a lot more things like, so you've been hired at this major company. Let me take the next hour and 45 minutes and explain your benefits program. It's a lot um, less creative,
Yeah.
but I love it. In a
Yeah.
weird way, I love it because I'm pretending to be a person who understands open enrollment and HSAs and FSAs. I don't understand those things, but I explain them on the daily. So I just to get to talk for a living is such a gift. And when I do audiobooks and I get to do novels with different characters and voices and accents, that's a thrill for me. But that's my bread and butter, not the animation stuff, unfortunately. I do animation, I've done some, but it's not as creative as what JP's doing, which is why I need to be, writing slasher movies in my kitchen to keep my creative juices flowing. I shouldn't say slasher and juices in the same sentence. That got away from me. We'll fix that in post.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
every podcast's a rodeo. I know. The I still, I mean, one of the things that we delight in when I mean, we've known each other for some time, and when we first started podcasting together, I of course went through your entire Audible catalog and played all the samples. And
Mm,
like I joke
mm.
about our delicious opening title, but you have an awesome voice for this stuff. Like
Thank
you
you.
have great characters, you have great, but what I know about the audio, and you've done a lot of audiobooks, like you're
Yeah.
one of those, your voice is everywhere in the Audible catalog. But what I know about the business of audiobook recording is that it is physically, practically exhausting to do. How can you talk just a little bit about what goes into the business of producing your part of an audiobook?
Yeah, I mean, I almost solely work on my own. Gone are the days of go to this studio and have an engineer do everything for you. So I do all my own recording and all my own homework, which is um, if it's a novel with characters, uh, I do a first read of the book. I make notes about characters because One time I got lazy and I thought, I know what I'm doing. And I got to the end of the book where it said, now that he was drunk, his Irish accent, which you could always hear, was really pronounced. And I had to go back because I
Oh
didn't know he had an Irish
no.
accent
Oh
because the author didn't think to
no.
mention it until page
That
400. So I
wow.
go through, I make notes about characters' ages, origins, anything I learn about them. Are they siblings with someone else so their voices might sound the same? Are they, you know, have they lost their accent, but you might hear a trace of it in certain moments? I make copious notes about the characters. I love archetypes. I love using people I know. So when it says this professor was really uptight, I'm like, ooh, that's Niles Crane. I'm just going to rip off Niles Crane and do him.
Mhm.
And then I'm off to the races with recording and engineering. I don't do the final mix. I send it off to a place to do the quality control, and they catch all my mistakes. And I mean, I make one or two. Uh, and
That
then they
actually, I'm
do
going to
the
interrupt you because
engineering.
I think that's really important. But before we talk about the production side, how long do you record straight? And you know, how has that improved over years of practice?
I'm pretty good with cold reads. I have to admit,
Yeah.
I'm pretty good. It takes me about twice as long. So if a book is 10 hours, it generally takes me 20 plus hours to record it, not much more.
Yeah.
However, I still have other jobs coming and going. I have, so much else to do. So I'll sit in my studio for 2 full hours without taking a break. But after that, I get a little loopy and I need to have more espresso and take a walk.
And are you editing it yourself? Like as you go, do you send an edited mix
I
to
do.
somebody to master?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. I've produced one audiobook,
Hmm.
and it was a absolute nightmare. It made me it pushed all of my buttons. I was not the reader. I just edited and mastered it, and it was horrific.
Oh,
Mostly because I was working with a new reader,
mm,
and there were a lot of edits in a
hmm,
10-hour read, and it just I I I realized where my patience stops
sure.
and the drinking
Sure.
begins.
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, you send it off, and then that you contract with an external studio to master it, or
Yeah.
you have somebody who does it, and
I have an
then the
engineer. Yeah.
finished package you send off to the publisher
Yes.
distributor.
That's interesting
Okay.
that you're the one who's high. So they hire you to do the voice, the read of the
Hmm.
book, and when you get hired for that, your job is to do the entire production. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, yes, I get paid and then I pay my engineer
Oh,
from
Okay.
interesting.
that. So,
As opposed to like I was thinking it would be like a producing a commercial or something where they bring in the performer to read and then the performer just leaves and then it's the audio engineer who they're really hiring to then do the work and as a
that used
separate
to be the
thing. Yeah.
way. And if
Yeah.
I were doing like a HarperCollins production, that would be the way. But I do so many independent writers
I
and smaller
gotcha.
publishing houses
Mhm.
and they know we're all at home with our equipment. They
Sure.
know we can do this. So
Yeah.
that's where
I
the
gotcha.
industry is moving.
Gotcha. Fascinating.
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 Somewhere in there, you made you actually got you got 30 nights made, which was
Yes.
delightful.
Thank you.
Still available on Tubi?
Tubi.
All right. So go
It's
check
actually
Tubi.
available on so many platforms, but I don't have those platforms. I think it's available on Plex as well.
Oh, okay.
Um, but yes, a comedy that I co-wrote with Tom W. Metz III, who I'm sure your
Yeah.
listeners are familiar with from the True Story family, and our
Sure.
dear friend Johnny Giacalone. We wrote together, produced together, and Johnny and I starred in a Tom W. Metz directed sex comedy. Hi, Mom and Dad.
So
It's yeah, go
yeah.
ahead, Andy.
So I mean, performing in front of the camera as single character is obviously a little different than when you're recording a book and you're playing every character and the narrator
Mhm,
and you're or narrator kind of like the voice of the author or whatever you want to call it, like the story.
mhm.
Um, and so talk a little bit about getting yourself into your headspace, whether it's like an individual performance, like for a film, versus when you're hopping into a book.
Well, first of all, I tried to play every character in 30 Nights, and Tommy said no. So he
Damn
had his
him.
own vision. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
Um, I mean, I'll be on the level with you. I'm not a I'm not a very deep person. I'm not a very deep actress. I I am. It wasn't method when I'm on camera. I'm in character and I'm giving it my all. But it wasn't. I was playing a woman very close to me. I didn't have to do much to drop into her. And the same goes with audiobooks, even though, maybe I'm playing a Russian spy, but it's just me in my pajamas in my studio trying
Yeah.
to take that in for a little bit and then I just leave it. So it's, you know, in audiobooks, I'm hinting at these characters more than actually embodying them.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Pete, sorry, I interrupted you.
You did. You did. Well, and that was what I was getting at. I want to talk about your that first experience of making the movie, uh, because that is your. I mean, apart from the voice work you've done on things like Chicken Little and the games Fallout and Final Fantasy, people will undoubtedly need to hear your experience about that on your podcast. We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm interested in how it was like to turn that idea that you worked on with Johnny and Tom into a feature film, and the fact that and the duration of that project, which is extraordinarily long, the fact that
Hmm.
we're still effectively pitching it today and how long
Hmm.
it took to get that going. What is that like when the work that you normally do for a day job is sit down, record for a bunch of hours, and then be done?
Um, It was a real pleasure, even though again, like I said, it was out of our control. We were either going to
Yeah.
get to make the movie or not. We were either going to get financing or not. So those parts are frustrating. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a lot of hustle and a lot of no's, but the actual process of making the movie was heaven. I mean, we all had a great time, and it was years of reasons to get together and write or get together and location scout or get together and strategize. And when you're doing
Yeah.
it with your friends, um and when the material was, I humbly say, so funny, because I know I wrote it, but that movie is just hilarious to me, and here we are just coming up with 30 ridiculous sex scenarios. So who
Yeah.
doesn't want to do that? So it makes
Yeah.
the 3-4 years fly by, because we did make a short first, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that got us some attention, and then that got us to be able to make the feature.
And then festivals and production, that I cannot imagine being in that space of uncertainty when the fun stuff is the writing and the making of the movie. But now you're living in this, okay, now I've got to figure out how to sell it space, which is
Yes.
not necessarily in your wheelhouse as a, creative.
Not so much, but I have a brain for business. What is that quote? A bod for
And a bod for
sin.
sin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I don't mind that stuff. I think I'm good in that world. And we got very lucky to get a sales agent who said, now we take over and now we
Hmm.
just send you your quarterly reports. So once we went through that process, we were hands off.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so the worst part of the whole thing was deliverables, which
What does
was
that
just,
what does that mean?
oh my God, they say, okay, here's what you have to get us so that we can become your sales agents and we can distribute your movie. And it's the I don't know what any of these words were. It was might as well have been in Japanese. It was so much. And thank God we had people working with us who knew what those were. And Tommy knew what a lot of it was. But you don't just give them a file and say, this is our movie, take
Right.
it. You have to give them so much stuff. And I was driving all over town I can't even remember the words for them, getting them produced at different places. Oh, we don't do that. You have to go over there for that and come back to us for the credits. And no, you have to change the credits. And now you have to go back into your original cut to do it. And it was lunacy. But we got it done.
Yeah, it's like clearance reports and a title. You have to do like a title check, and like yeah, it's a long laundry list of different types of your audio and your video all has to be delivered a certain way. I don't know
Yes.
about your project, but like sometimes it all boils down to all the different you have to provide captions in different
Yep.
languages and
Yeah,
all
it
of
was.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to just say we also had a fourth producer. Her name is Liz Vakovac, and she was a beast. She knew what she was doing. And she,
Nice.
whenever she said jump, and I was like, how high? She understood what we were doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank God for her. And she's wonderful.
Well, and Andy has fever dreams about this stuff, like in the good kind.
Oh,
Wakes up just wondering, why don't I have more clearance reports? God, I want another clearance report.
Ah, yes.
Can you
Well,
make that happen, Pete?
Yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm
Show
gonna
him some
try.
love.
Yeah.
That's right. Come on. Well, so I mean, that was a big part. You were a big part of that production, and working now primarily like you're spending a lot of time writing,
Yes.
and that is kind of an isolated job, except when you get to have those meetings and you get to talk to people about these projects. But inevitably, it leads to a lot of joy and everything because you're just creating and you get to do all sorts of things. Is there like what type of writing? What's your genres? Like, do you have particular areas of focus that you spend your time in, and what do you love about those?
Well, I would always say comedy. I mean, that's just
Okay.
who I am.
Yeah.
And I have a wonderful writing partner named Jonas Vale, and he actually lives in Berlin. So we are very
Wow.
isolated. I'll just
Yeah. Yeah.
do pages and send them, and he'll do pages and send them. But we work together a lot. We started off writing like a heartfelt comedy, a heist movie, and that turned into another comedy, which turned into another comedy. And our brilliant manager said, give us other genres. What else you got?
Yeah.
And
Right.
my theory was horror always sells. People love horror movies. That fan base is rabid.
Sure.
But
And
aren't you notoriously prude for violence?
yeah,
Yep.
turns out not
Fascinating.
writing it is okay.
Ah, the
So
key.
yeah, so now we've written 2 horror films. It's and people who know me are like, "What you're doing what?" And I'm getting in there with some blood and guts,
Okay.
but they have comedic bents.
Yeah.
You got to tell me, what is what is the experience of violence you are most proud of writing that we will see at some point with no context?
Somebody making out with a detached head and
Well,
ending up
that's
with the detached head's gum in their own mouth.
oh,
Lovely.
okay. There you
I
go.
mean, I know that's like not pure violence, but
No, but still, it's
yeah.
there are going to
It
be
paints a
people
pretty
who are like,
picture.
"Oh, it's the detached head that's disgusting," and I wager more people are like, "Oh, they chew each other's
Gum.
gum."
Mhm.
I don't care if the head's detached or not. That's just unsanitary.
Yeah. Pretty gross.
Outstanding.
Yep.
Well, and I know it's easy to, because like when you have that drive for comedy, of still imbuing those other stories with that level of comedy, like you said, like you're still throwing some comedy into that. And I think there's certainly a level in horror that balances the line of horror and comedy, because
Mhm.
we were talking on Pete and I on our other show, The Next Reel, about the early Roger Corman film, The Little Shop of Horrors, and
Oh,
how Roger Corman was like, there's like in a horror movie, you've got a big scare, and then what does the audience do afterward? Once they've kind of settled down, they're laughing because they're
yep.
kind of laughing at how it hit them. And so he wanted to find that blend of like, well, if they're laughing, let's throw more comedy in, and kind of like built these little horror comedies that he would do. And I think that there's those two genres, I think, create really exciting blends, and I think you can do a lot with them. And
Yes.
things. I mean, I don't know how far down the horror road you've gone, but certainly something like Shaun of the Dead, I think,
Oh,
is a
yeah.
perfect example of kind of that horror comedy that can be such a success.
They are rare, though. I mean, there are a bunch I love, like Tucker and Dale versus Evil and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But in pitching, we have been told, and we have found you can't really say horror comedy. It can be a horror
Interesting.
movie and there can be some good laughs.
Yeah.
But horror comedy is a genre that makes people go, well, is it a comedy or is it a horror? It's just not clean for people.
Right.
So
Yeah,
we write
interesting.
horror movies, and then we're thrilled when people say, I also laughed a lot.
Gotcha.
But
So it's got to be subversive. You got to sneak it in there.
yeah,
Cabin in the
because
Woods, right? Like
not really a comedy though. Some funny moments.
some funny moments.
People
Okay.
call Scream a horror comedy.
You
Nope,
don't think so?
it's a horror movie with some funny
Yeah.
moments. So,
Yeah.
but Tucker and Dale, that's a comedy.
Much more
Right.
intentionally broad.
Yes.
Funny
Well,
Things
stuff.
like Ready or Not, I think
Yeah.
qualifies as
Okay.
a comedy. But
That's
I'm
interesting.
not the
It's
be all
like,
end all.
yeah, because it's like, where is the line then?
Right.
Like, how many laughs does it require before it can cross the line into officially being a horror comedy?
I think
Right.
it's
And we're
6.
not
It's
doing
6
like a
laugh line.
scary movie
6.
parody film, because there
Yeah,
are those
right.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
We're not
sure.
doing that. So it's,
No. Right.
it's
Totally
yeah, we
different.
got to toe the line, but I love doing it.
That's
I
fantastic.
really do.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You joke about your mom all the time, mostly when you
Yes.
say things that are subversive. At what point did your folks look at you and say, "Oh, this counts as a real job"?
I thought this was going to be like a therapy question. You're like, you talk about your mom a lot. My mother begged me to major in something else in college. And I said, the only way I'll go to college is if I can major in musical theater. Lucky her. So we struck that deal.
Sounds like a real standoff.
Yeah,
It
right.
what? Well, I was like, I'm just going to move to New York City. I'm 17. I'm ready. I
Mhm.
just want to hit the chorus line, equity lines and audition to be in the chorus of Broadway musicals. That's all I ever wanted. So we struck a deal that I would go to college if I could study this. And gosh, I guess I gave up bartending / nannying / cocktail waitressing / all of that after I had been doing voiceover for about 2 years. And I think that's when she was like, oh, you're no longer / you're no longer doing other things. You're making
Yeah.
a living as an actor. And that's probably when it was. Was she
2 years.
happy? Is she happy with it? I don't think
Yeah.
so. But
You don't have a survey she fills out every few years to check how you're rating.
she doesn't really understand most of it, the audiobooks and the podcasts and the writing she gets because she sees movies. But
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's been fascinating talking. Excuse me. It has been fascinating talking with you about your career, but let's shift gears and jump into this movie now that you brought to us, Lasse Hallström's What's Eating Gilbert Grape. So this film, I remember when it came out, and I know I went and saw it in the theaters, and I remember really enjoying it. I know I've seen it a few times, but I hadn't thought about it in quite a while. And so when this was the movie you wanted to talk about, it was kind of exciting to go back and revisit it. What is it about this movie for you that just makes it click so much and work so well for you?
well, my first instinct was to do my favorite movie of all time, Waiting for Guffman, which is in my
So
mind a
funny.
work of genius. It's
Yes.
just perfect.
Yeah.
But I wanted to step outside of my usual thing is comedies. Dumb and Dumber. I mean, I'm like a 12-year-old boy. I laugh at farts. This movie isn't that at all. And I wanted to seem smarter than that on your podcast. So I looked
Aha.
up movies with foreign directors with hard to pronounce names, and this one popped right up. No,
So had you seen it before?
no. I remember seeing this movie too, and it satisfies my favorite genre, which is small movies about people who love each other and want to do right by each other, but can't seem to. They keep making mistakes. They keep failing each other and themselves, but their intentions are so good. I know it's a very specific, slice of the movie pie that I'm talking about, but this came out around the same time as Station Agent, if I'm not mistaken, and I flipped for both of those movies. I just found them both to be heartbreaking because you were rooting for everybody, and and everybody's rooting for each other but making
Yeah.
mistakes. That's what this movie, it guts me. It
Yeah.
just guts me. I can't explain why I love that, but I think that's life. We all have good intentions, hopefully.
Yeah. And I think Lasse Hallström is a director who's made a lot of those sorts of movies through his career, right? Like with My Life as a Dog and The Cider House Rules and Chocolat. Like I feel like all of those films are kind of touching on that in some capacity, like human stories about humans trying to figure out how to live with each other and how to find whatever it is they're looking for. And I think that's a key part of this story for sure, as we're following Gilbert. Oh, what is going on? I think.
Oh my God, Andy has a ghost in his house. There's a
Yeah.
ghost.
There's a ghost.
Somebody needs to get the cat. The cat is sitting on the other side of my door, just meowing. Please get the cat. She wants in here. It's like, no.
I have one too, doing the
She's
same.
driving me nuts. Yeah. But like, this is a story about Gilbert as he's living in this small town in Iowa and trying to, I mean, he's kind of floating along, right? He's just kind of like, he's got his family. He's got this older woman that he's sleeping with, older married woman that he's sleeping with. He's got his job that's kind of a dead end job, and there's really not much else for him at this point in time. He's got his siblings, the youngest of which is Leonardo DiCaprio. Fantastic in this film, just brilliant in his performance of Arnie. And then the two sisters, and then their mom, which is she is a very obese woman and doesn't leave the house, and so he is just stuck. And I think that's what's interesting about this film is the way that it sets up Gilbert's world as this place where he can't even see that there's a way out, right?
Right. Haven't we all felt that?
Yeah.
And over the course of this summer, his life changes in many ways, but he ends up in the same place. It's not, his life doesn't take off. His dreams don't come true. He doesn't hit the lottery, but
yeah. But he does get out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What's fascinating about to me about his character, and I have to say, what happened to him, Johnny Depp? Like he was just fantastic in this movie, and the character that he is embodied here is this character that is so kind of humanely put upon. Like his journey of kindness and goodness in being an abject people pleaser, and just existing in that space and not understanding it until sort of late in the film, like what that role, the honor and responsibility of that role is extraordinary. Like I found him so beautifully relatable as just a good human being who is struggling with the weight of an entire world on his shoulders. And the fact that he is the one responsible for taking care of Arnie 99% of the time, and also has to deal with reinforcing the basement ceiling so his mother doesn't fall through the floor. Like the balance of those duties is stark. And I think he plays this extraordinarily deeply. What an incredible, like everybody talks about Leonardo DiCaprio, which is an extraordinary performance in its own right. But I kind of am here for Johnny Depp. Like he's that good to me.
I agree wholeheartedly. I happen to love every performance in this movie, and I could go on and on about them. But something that I love is that it's not a depressing movie. Even though his life is depressing, the town is depressing, the sense of place they establish. Arnie and Gilbert are on the side of the road waiting for campers to go by. That's the highlight of their summer, is that the campers go by.
Yeah.
And there is a joy in that. And I don't know how you achieve that. There's no color in the movie. It's all sepia tones. It should make you want to turn it off because you can't take it anymore. And yet there is a joy throughout that Johnny Depp finds in Arnie, even though Arnie drives him insane. It's oh God, all of it is
Yeah.
so well done and small.
You know what I'd forgotten was in a movie that is narratively sort of plain, right? Like
Mhm,
you said, nothing extraordinary really happens until kind of the end. This movie is full of suspense. Like
mhm,
watching it last night, I was really moved by how often I thought something horrible was going to happen, that the movie was going to pull the rug out from under me and something horrible was going to happen. They hang a flag on mom in the floor. Another writer could have put her through the floor.
mhm.
They hang a flag on Arnie 3 times climbing up
Climbing the
the
water
water tower.
tower.
He could have fallen off that water tower. That would have been a dramatic turn. He never falls off the water tower. They hang a flag on him getting arrested, Arnie getting arrested that 3rd time. They could have done something horrible to him in jail. Nothing horrible to him. It happens to him in jail. And yet I felt that roller coaster every time. That's the thing that I think is a bit uh, writerly genius,
Mhm.
that Hedges is able to put me in that space, even though nothing ever really pans out. I was
Right,
still in it.
right.
Yeah,
And if
Well, and I
we're in
think
it, imagine what those characters are feeling.
yeah,
right,
right.
yeah. Well, and I think that's what Hallstrom is so good at in the films that he directs, is tapping into those little moments in the way that the writers craft the scripts, to get the actors to give us that, where these smaller, I mean, none of the films that he makes, I wouldn't say are like big films, but they all kind of have this personal, these human stories that we're following. And it's just the way that he gets the actors to kind of find the way to deliver these performances that end up drawing us in so much to follow along with these relatively small stories. And I think that's what is so impressive with this film, and revisiting it, is just how connected I immediately am to
Mhm.
the characters. And Mandy, you were talking about like that right out of the gate. We're watching them sitting by the side of the road, waiting for those trailers to come by, and as soon as we see that glint, like that little sparkle of the sun hitting them, it's just like the spark in Arnie's life. He's just like, he's so excited, and then it just draws us in, and they just kind of make us, they pull us along so effectively through all of it. And that's, I think, the smarts in the way that the characters are written and how they interact. It's just a really powerful film.
Yep.
And we haven't really jumped into the love interest that we end up with for Gilbert, and that's Juliette Lewis, who's great in the film, and she's only here because she and her grandma are campers, and their trailer, their truck breaks down, and they
Right.
have to stop here, and then they're stuck here waiting for a part to get ordered so that they can fix it. So it's new people in town, and
Mhm.
that's something that's kind of exciting. And
Of course.
yeah, I think it gives us a little bit of that joy, right, of seeing this new girl, and then when they start interacting.
Well, I know it's Gilbert's story, but I I think that Arnie is one of the most beautifully portrayed characters I've ever seen, and they don't say what he has that makes him neurodivergent. He's just neurodivergent.
Yeah,
And the way Juliette Lewis's character treats him is so realistic. I don't I don't know how much time you've spent with people like Arnie, but I have. And people want to be kind, but they're afraid and they
yeah,
don't
Mhm.
quite know how to approach. But then they get a little comfortable and then something happens that's very uncomfortable, and she walks that line in performance and in writing so beautifully. So as much as it's a lovely story about Gilbert Grape and this girl in town, I fixate on how Arnie factors in and how she treats him. And she wants to bond with him and treat him normally, but it's really difficult. And
yeah.
I just think that's so real. I mean, I took some notes as I was watching, and the word real just appears in every note I took because there's nothing movie-esque about this movie. You feel like you're spying on these people. and it's exquisite, I think.
Well, and there's something really sort of, I'll say, kind of teenage tantalizing or titillating about their road relationship. The fact that he becomes kind of a port in the storm for
Mhm.
her, and that that cycle continues at the end of the movie. Sort of the circle completes as she comes back again
Right.
on their caravan trip, and I think that's really beautiful because I think we have these relationships in of our youth where we're ships in the night with other people, and they become very short-term relationships and still lovely and cherished, and that's one of the things that we get out of this portrayal of young adult love.
Now, Andy said, I think it was Andy said he gets out, but I don't know that the end implies he's getting out, just that she's come back for
Well,
another summer.
they get into the vehicle with her,
But
and
they don't have
so
suitcases or anything. Like, I
they
think
don't
I
have
think
it's,
they're just
suitcases.
riding into their house, right?
yeah, I think it's,
Riding.
Oh,
you're
okay.
back, you're back. I'm so excited. And
Yeah.
we can
Yeah,
spend another week or whatever of the summer together.
yeah,
I
I
don't
just kind of
necessarily think he's
assumed.
going anywhere.
Well, because my assumption, and I guess that's a good point, certainly something worth discussing, because there's nothing left for them in the town anymore, right?
Mhm.
Like they, Mama's passed away, and they've gotten rid of the house, and his sisters have gone their own separate ways, and he and Arnie are the only ones there, and he says to Arnie, "We can go anywhere," and I don't know, my sense was, and maybe it's more directorial than realistic, but the fact that they get in the vehicle's not broken down, so they're not stopping in town. Like we saw at the beginning,
True.
like he saw them leave, and he says, they know the right thing to do, not stop. Like they
Mhm.
just keep on going. There's nothing to see here in this little town. And so my assumption was always they get in the car and they're just going to go and
That could be.
explore. Yeah. But I mean,
that's interesting.
yeah.
I never saw that, and that actually, to me, it does change the nature of the ending, sort of the emotional weight of the ending. For me, because I have such an attachment to the idea of super impermanent relationships, my expectation was that eventually they're going to leave again, and
Mhm.
the sort of sad commentary on where Johnny Depp is, or where he is with Arnie, is that we can go anywhere. Of course we won't, because we are tied together. And
That's how I interpret it. And how could
yeah,
Arnie really leave his comfort zone? I
yeah,
don't see Arnie in the big city. But I don't know if we're supposed to have this debate. Maybe it is up for
yeah,
interpretation. I didn't read the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
haven't either.
but
But knowing that Peter Hedges shifted pretty shortly after writing his book into screenplays,
mhm.
my hunch or my guess is that it's probably pretty comparable. Like it feels like
yeah,
he's one of those writers who just writes, screenplay types of novels. So who
Yeah.
knows? Yeah.
yeah. I want to talk about Mama. Can we talk about Mama? I think her
Yeah.
story is so interesting. Darlene Cates,
Mhm.
how she became an actor.
Mhm.
Sally, Jesse, Raphael, y'all. When's the last time you said those three words together? Darlene was on an episode in 1983 of Sally Jesse Raphael's show called Too Heavy to Leave Their House.
Mhm.
And Peter Hedges proposed to her that she play the mother character shortly after seeing that episode. Note, we now know what kind of television Peter Hedges was watching at the time. It's
True.
important to know that he is a human being interested in those kinds of shows. Um, and so she did this. She only did 5 other bits. She did some, TV appearance and a short and another film.
Not
What'd
an
you think of her?
actress.
Not an actress. What'd you think of her performance in this as a complete noob to the business?
I think it's perfection. I feel
Yeah.
her discomfort and heartbreak and frustration and hope. I feel it all. I don't know how she achieved it. And on a technical
Yeah,
level, the way they dressed her, and her hair is so greasy throughout the movie because she can't really get up and take a shower.
Yeah.
Touches like that are so meaningful to me. And I just watching her hug Arnie and say, like, don't disappear, don't disappear. I thought she was a miracle.
that moment when, because we're getting bits and pieces of the backstory with Dad over the course of the story, and finding out that, I think at the beginning of the film, he says something like, since the time they hung him out to dry or something. So it's like, okay, so was Dad in prison? Like, what happened to him? And then we find out, no, he like hung himself in the basement of their house. And that was kind of like what had happened. Like, he left at some point and then, I don't know, I guess came back and hung himself. And that moment when, after, like, kind of like toward the end of the film, after Gilbert really gets angry at Arnie and ends up hitting him a number of times, and then, you know, Arnie runs off and Gilbert drives away and is kind of going to leave town, but then ends up kind of finding Juliette Lewis again and spending the night with her. And when he comes back and talks to Mama in the morning, and that was that point where she's just like, you know, I thought you left and I wasn't going to be able to take it again. And like bringing us back to all of that drama and the emotional turmoil that she felt when her husband disappeared for a while. And she's really delivering a lot in all of those little moments throughout the film. And it is quite amazing what she's giving us.
Pete, did you like the performance? I'm feeling like you
yeah.
were. Yeah.
Oh no, I absolutely did. I am so I find myself like consistently surprised through the movie up to the point where she crawls, climbs those stairs, that she delivers that performance that she does, and their choice at the end to be so thoughtful and remove all of the furniture and put it out on the yard and to just create a pyre that is so ceremonial and sort of, it just like it was meant to be. That is the way they were meant to move their family to this next chapter. And it seems so strange from an insurance perspective, but now the insurance guy's dead, so who cares? Like, it's just one thing after another that just made it feel like this was a sign in burning their home with Mama's body in it. This is a sign that they're ready to move on, whatever that means. And that's, I think, goes to the end again, which is that ultimately the family, it was time for the family to move on and go about their own things in the future, right? And that includes the unit of Gilbert and Arnie. And that's okay. Like that's the hopeful thing for me, that Arnie that they have a singular identity, recognizing, of course, the unbelievable weight of taking care of someone in Arnie's position takes on the caregivers. It's that, I think, is beautiful.
Yeah. And it's interesting that he and his sisters all kind of go their separate ways. And because inevitably, if that were to happen, which it does at the end of the film, it does leave one person solely in charge of Arnie. And I know you said earlier, it's like, well, he's essentially 99% in charge of Arnie, but now he's like 100%. And it really is his, that will be his life moving forward.
Yeah. I find it, I don't know if I'm picking up on this, so if I'm wrong, please forgive me. I find it hard to talk about this movie without fighting tears. I find it so unbelievably moving and gut-wrenching. And I feel like I'm picking up on that from you guys. Maybe maybe you have allergies. I don't know. But the ideas are so beautiful, you know, and the love is so palpable. And I just... I can't.
Well, I mean, speaking to your point about like how strongly portrayed the characters and the emotions are, one of my favorite moments of the film is when Gilbert brings over, and I keep forgetting the character's name, Becky. When Gilbert brings Becky to his house so that she can finally meet his mom.
Well, I wasn't always like this.
But that moment, like before he lets her come, before she lets him bring her in, and she's just like, no, like she's so petrified of allowing somebody else from outside the family, or even let alone outside the town, see her who she is, and to bring her in and welcome her to her house. Like that moment of just that raw sense of being on display, just like that hits me so much in that moment. And I feel for Mama so much in that moment. And it's so much exactly what you were saying about how Becky relates to Arnie, the way that she has her conversation with Mama here. And it ended up allowing like all of those barriers to come down and just for people to just be there. And it's a powerful moment. It really is very, very strong.
Yep.
Well, and how many times does Becky come through the scene as like this transient angel who is just absolving discomfort from situations, right? She is the ultimate like sort of protagonist of the emotional protagonist of the movie, because she takes awkwardness and pain and just makes it normal, normalizes it. And I think that sequence with Mama at the end is case in point. She just makes it okay. She makes everything okay.
And it's interesting, even to the point where when Mary Steenburgen's character, who is the older married woman who Gilbert's having the affair with, when after her husband dies and she comes to the store to see Gilbert and kind of give him her goodbyes, and Becky's there, and she's like, he's all yours, and leaves. And that moment between Becky and Gilbert is also, again, like, it just shows like this sense of her understanding Gilbert in his world and always acknowledging that those things are there, but allowing herself to move past it. And because she's like, are you going to miss her? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, good. Like, that is another of those moments where it's just like, she's acknowledging it's okay to have those feelings. You don't have to hide that. And it's good that you're not hiding those, and I think that's what makes it so special, when you have those little elements that allow these humans to be so human.
Yes. But ultimately well-intentioned. Mary Steenburgen is saying good luck, right? She cares about Gilbert, and it's just, it guts me. I haven't expressed my rage, though, at Martin Landau, who won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor that year for Ed Wood over Leonardo DiCaprio.
I don't think this was that year. It was
I looked it up.
It was Tommy Lee Jones for it's Tommy Lee Jones for The Fugitive.
For The Fugitive? Well, that's even worse.
Yeah, I know.
I'm shocked. I thought it said
better.
Martin Landau.
I think that was the year before. That might have
peace.
been the year of. Yeah.
You guys, have you ever seen a performance like this? Leonardo DiCaprio is absolutely revelatory in this.
The problem is Tommy Lee Jones needed and successfully executed a hard target search, and that means something, Mandy.
Every outhouse, hen house.
It was his Color of Money Oscar, and it pisses me off. I cannot believe he did not win an Oscar for this role.
I just have to say, let me read the rundown of performers and their films that they were in. Tommy Lee Jones won for The Fugitive. Great movie. Leonardo DiCaprio for What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Ralph Fiennes for Schindler's List. John Malkovich for In the Line of Fire. That might be more in the Fugitive line of things. And Pete Postlethwaite for In the Name of the Father. Like, there are some pretty strong performers in there, and Tommy Lee Jones is the one that came out on top.
We could be having the same argument if Ralph Fiennes or Pete Postlethwaite had won. Like, really,
I'd be a little happier with those decisions.
Maybe.
Those decisions would make more sense.
I think so.
I think so. But his performance of Arnie is so, it's the opposite of what I was saying about myself as an actress. He's so in there. He's in this body and in this soul so completely. The drooling and the spitting and the just all of the things that he just let himself go. Yeah. And how he can convey after Gilbert hits him and he has that flash of really understanding what has just happened, but then the flash just goes away because that's not how Arnie's brain works. So
Right.
he gets it and then it's over and he forgets, but it sticks with him. He remembers on some level. I don't know how you achieve that as an actor. I love it.
It's astonishing to watch, and you hear him talk about how he, the what a lot of actors do in things like this. They're observing people with the similar issues that they're dealing with, different, whether it's neurodivergence or whatever, and trying to get a handle on it. And then just mimicking to the point of understanding and building it into just your personality. But it's like all the little tics and just the speech patterns and just even the way like his eyes looked, like it's like he wasn't ever completely opening his eyes. There was something about it that just like, I don't know, I was just watching him throughout this and I'm like, he is doing so many things on so many levels that I just am not even comprehending to completely transform himself into a completely different person.
Yeah.
Which is why when I see that he won the Best Emerging Actor Award from the Chicago Film Critics Association for this film, I find that almost as insulting.
Yes, this is a masterclass in
right,
acting.
it really
Yes.
is. This is a preternaturally talented young man at this point in his life. And sure, I'm glad he gets all of the accolades for The Revenant, right? His winningest film. But really, in terms of performance, I'm not sure I've seen him do the kinds of things you just described, right? Embodying this character as well in any other film that he's done from here. I mean, this one seems like
my mom said Wolf of Wall Street. I've never seen it, but she mentioned that.
But they're also different, and I think the
so
difference
different.
is that this one from, I mean, there's different types of performances when you're playing the Wolf of Wall Street or the Revenant or Catch Me If You Can or any of these other performances where you're taking on a person and their personality and kind of giving us breathing life into the performance in that way, as opposed to taking on a character like Arnie with these neurodivergent issues and really it's just a complete transformation that you really need to take in order to even get there. And I think that's the thing that makes it so revelatory. And I just don't think those sorts of performances or those sorts of roles come around too often.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. They don't. Right. And also because, we're watching this movie, from 93 and, how well has the movie dated in terms of a portrayal of intellectual disability and obesity and, small town stagnation? Like we're looking at a movie that we already loved from when we saw it that first time. And I wonder how people, watching this movie today with today's sensibilities who've never seen it before would look at it.
I think it ages really well. I don't find it tone deaf in those worlds.
I'm right there with you.
I mean, I don't either. I'm just saying.
I mean, we could Family Feud it and take a survey and ask some people, and
right.
but I think it's timeless. Yeah. To know it's 30 years old feels bizarre to me. It just doesn't feel that.
Well, I think that's what I really love about Lasse Hallström again as the director is just that I think that because he works so hard in capturing such human elements within his stories that it allows the stories to live beyond their time. And, with these characters that, I mean, you could tell this story with a morbidly obese person and a kid who's very, very neurodivergent. And it could be a Rain Man level of production. And I mean, I love Rain Man. It's a fantastic movie, but the way that character is portrayed and treated now feels dated. It now feels like, well, that's because we didn't really know what that was at the time. And now we have a much better handle on it. Whereas here, it's just like, you're just portraying like, these characters as real people. And I think that's the strength.
Yep.
Yeah, I think context is everything, and having them portrayed in a family setting and never having to really deal with like how professionals see this condition, whatever condition it is, that helps the movie a lot. We don't have
Well,
to ask questions.
and some of it is like, we have characters who are gray. They're not just,
Yeah.
white or black, good or bad. Gilbert is, these little kids come over to the house and he's holding them up to the window so they can peek in and see his mom.
The
Like
freak,
he is
the
also
carnival
kind
freak.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. He is
Yeah.
he is kind of right there with him, like embarrassed at what his mom has become and just like, I don't like that you're that way and I'm just going to do this, to the point where John C. Reilly, his friend, is like, what are you doing? Like,
I know.
Great moment. But
We haven't even
that's
talked about John C. Reilly. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
no, yeah, no, that's totally fine. I was just gonna say that's what's so interesting about these characters is they're painted in so many different shades of gray, especially our protagonist Gilbert, because
Right.
I mean he's having an affair with a married woman. He's the way that he's treating his mother or looks at his mother. I think it really is like only his relationship with Arnie that seems like he's pure good in
Mhm.
that particular case, until of course he gets mad at him.
But don't we all understand all of that?
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
His need
Earned.
um, to cut people off at the pass. Like if I make fun of my mom and I do this, then you can't.
Yeah.
Not if I do it first mentality.
Right, right.
But you mentioned John C. Reilly, and he has his
Yes.
own story where he's so excited the Burger Barn is coming to town. And even that character breaks my heart, because the hope that when the Burger Barn pulls up and he thinks, I've struck gold, my life is going to be easy street from here on out, and it's not. It's
Yeah.
just more lovely heartbreak.
Yeah, right, right. But and paired with, and this is like the great balance of like that sort of story with the comedy,
Mhm.
is it's a funeral when the Burger Barn arrives, and Arnie sees the Burger Barn, which is a giant barn-shaped building
Mhm.
being pulled on a trailer, and won't stop like screaming about it while the funeral is
Yep.
still going on, and like that's comedy gold right there.
Now, Pete,
Awesome.
I don't know if you picked up on this, my Buckaroo Banzai loving friend, but Amy Grape was in Buckaroo Banzai.
She was
Yeah.
one
Oh,
of the
really?
few women
Yes.
in
And
when
when I chose this, I didn't realize I would love to say I knew that, and that's why I chose it. But there's always a Buckaroo Banzai connection.
it
There
it
it
goes all the
is.
way to the top,
It
Mandy.
does.
That's the truth.
Yes. Yes.
I'm proud of you for knowing that. I feel like your podcast we're really starting to see it take root
Oh, I'm half nerd already. It's working.
already.
Just a few
That's
more
fantastic.
episodes, and you won't even recognize me.
You'll have converted to full nerd.
Yes.
Full nerd.
So you'll have to change the title from "Make Me a Nerd" to "Keep Me Nerdy."
Sustain my nerdability. Yeah.
Sustain my
Right.
nerd. I've been nerducated.
Yep.
Can we talk for a quick minute about this relationship? I mentioned a few times Mary Steenburgen, the unhappy housewife Betty, who's married to Kevin Teague, who is the insurance guy in town, and it's a fascinating relationship because of the Gilbert, I think, knows he shouldn't be doing it. She needs something in her life because she's clearly not getting it in her marriage. He can't get out of it as much as he can kind of tell I shouldn't really be doing this. But the thing that I think was so interesting in revisiting this, I'd kind of forgotten the way that the husband ends up behaving through the course of the film. He comes over and he's like manically jumping on his trampoline with his children, kind of because you think he knows Gilbert's in there and things are going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going to take it out on this like intense trampoline jumping, and it just kind of keeps going. And then he's saying, Gilbert, you need to come to my office and have a chat man to man, like all of these things. And it's just like, it's so off-putting. How does that whole relationship play for you?
Well, I love it. No surprise. But I think he knows about the affair, and he is trying to turn that into a sale. That's plain and simply his motivation is, it's fine. Go ahead and sleep with my wife, but you need to take out a policy with my company if you want to keep doing this. I mean, that's his motivation to me.
That's
Is it
amazing.
really? I go back and forth. I think the setup is that, like, when he gets home and he's maximum parenting, which I think is awesome, especially when he goes so crazy and he puts the kids fully dressed in the pool.
Yeah.
Uh, and as a sidebar, there's a lot of fully dressed swimming in this movie, and I don't care for it. I feel
Okay.
like they need proper equipment.
Okay.
But
You were already shuddering when they walked into just a little like a lake right there.
he got his shoes wet, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Done. I'm done. Turn it off."
Oh, I didn't know that was
Yeah,
a
no, I
thing.
don't like
not a
soggy
fan of.
feet.
Well,
Oh,
he
God.
also doesn't like lake swimming.
Lake
Okay.
swimming is rough. We didn't
Oh,
we
that
didn't do
I
an
did
algae
know
bloom
from
count.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
That Smell? I
don't
do
care
remember
for it.
that.
So, I don't even remember what we're talking about. Oh, dad, maximum parenting. The fact that I think his maximum parenting could be a sign that he is just totally oblivious of what's going on in the house. I mean, I go back and forth on it. Now that we're talking about it, I think, well, of course he did know.
He
And
clocks it.
did she kill him? Do you think did he really have a heart attack? Like, there's a mystery.
I think he had a heart attack. His desperation when he
Yeah.
gets Gilbert in his office and he's like, "You need insurance. You need insurance. Hold on." And he answers the phone and something like he's very high strung. Things are not going his way.
More great suspense too, right? Because you think he's going to turn around and lay into Gilbert that she's called and outed herself
Mhm.
as having an affair with Gilbert, but she just set the house on fire.
Hmm.
Right.
Great
because of
setup and
the
payoff.
breakup with Gilbert. Like all of that ties
Right.
in so perfectly in that
It
little
is
story.
perfect.
It's
Yeah.
just it's crazy how it all plays out. Yeah, I don't think she killed him. If anything, I mean, I don't even think she was probably paying attention because she was already so distraught with everything that just happened with Gilbert and then burning the house or setting the house on fire that he had his heart attack and fell over into the pool. I don't think that she would have even clocked that, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've always thought that he suspected, like he may not have ever had proof, but I felt like he suspected to a point. Like he comes home and Gilbert comes out of his house kind of tucking his shirt and his
Adjusting his-
wife comes
yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
I'm just like
right.
he has to know what's going
does.
on and there's something else. And I like your insurance, the way that you're seeing it with the insurance sale, because that definitely makes sense with that conversation then.
And talk about, I mean, Kevin Teague, the actor, is you
I
know,
just love watching him.
he's anywhere. You kind of know what you're going to get with him. He
Mhm.
plays a very, especially now, he plays a very sort of similar, damaged older masculine character. And but he's a face that I feel like I've grown up with.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun in the film. This is are you a fan of Lasse Hallström's other films, Mandy?
I mean, as you were listing them off, I was like, I liked Cider House Rules, and there was one more in there that
Chocolat.
Chocolat I liked, yeah,
Yeah.
but they didn't speak to me like this does.
Yeah, no, I think this is kind of peak. I mean, Chocolat is the one, of course, that got plenty of Oscar nominations around. But actually, Hachi, A Dog's Tale. I'll tell you, if you
Yep.
want to watch a
That's
hard
it.
dog movie that's going to be a major tearjerker, that is the one to watch.
Why would I want to do that?
Don't love that experience,
Mm.
but it's a great movie.
It is great. It is great, but it's totally different than this sort of
Yep.
film. Like that is I mean, it's a strong film, great characters, everything, but it's a dog film, and any of those that once you put that into the mix, it kind of creates a whole genre in and of itself. Really, this film is like just such a perfect little window into life in a small town, the desire to get out, but feeling I don't know how, and so I'll just float along and just see what happens. And also just feeling like obliged to handle things. And I think they paint all of that so well in this film.
Their
And it
burdens
just-
are so heavy.
Yeah. It makes for just a really touching, really strong film.
I agree. And I
So-
feel as the viewer that we are privileged to be dropped into this world. And then we're relieved when we get to leave it because it is such a heavy world. But
Yeah.
it's a privilege to spend 2 hours there. I love it.
It doesn't leave you heavy though. That's the thing
I
that's
know.
so lovely about it. Like, it's a heavy world, and then at the end it just feels lighter. It just feels lighter. I feel good when I'm finished watching this movie.
Mhm.
I didn't stay. Is there a post-credit scene where everybody dies? I hope not. Let's just pretend there isn't.
my husband and I were both crying, and I was like, bloopers, like as the credits roll.
Blooper reel.
Yeah.
I will say that there are two things with this film that have never left me, and that one that I still, like, my wife and I will still jokingly say at random times, I could go at any time. Like, we still throw that out there because it's just always funny. And the other one is I have never gotten over, and this goes back to DiCaprio and his performance. I've never forgotten the moment when just that curiosity of taking a grasshopper and putting its head in the little thing and then chopping the head off, and like the sheer kind of like curiosity, like, that little boy curiosity of like, what happens if I do this? You kill an animal and you've ripped its head off, and then he sticks it in his pocket. And then we immediately cut to that moment where he's sitting on the porch crying because he killed it. Like, that was perfect. That was just absolutely perfect.
When you were going to reference building up to that, I knew you were going to talk about the grasshopper. It's just, it's exquisite.
It sticks. It's perfect. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Mandy, thank you so much for bringing this movie to chat about. It's been a delight talking with you about it.
Thank you
So
guys
much
for
fun.
letting me do this.
Absolutely.
And no fart
of
jokes
course.
in the whole movie.
Nope.
That's
Not a
true.
one.
Yeah.
Which they could have squeezed it in, I'm sure. So a different director
Squeezed.
could have definitely
Squeezed or squeezed it out.
could have pinched it out. Yep.
Oh God. Unnecessarily
Oh,
scatological,
I
Andy.
know. You got to go there. Mandy, tell everybody what you're working on. Where can they find you on the socials? Tell us about Miscast LA. What are you up to?
Okay. Socials are at Miscast LA on Instagram, or at Mandy_Kaplan_Clavens, both with Ks. The next show is September 29th. This probably won't be out by then, correct? So if you're
that's
in
a
Los
good question.
Angeles, follow at Miscast LA. It's a night of music and dance, I'll put that in quotes, and fun, and it's all for charity, and we do it every 3 months at the Pico on Pico in LA.
Because what's the concept?
Oh, Miscast, it's called Right Singer, Wrong Song. So everybody performs songs from musicals or film for which they are the wrong gender, race, type, age, skill set. It is all done
Talent? Do
with
you have
heart and
people who
humor.
have no talent for singing perform? Maybe they're great basket
Pete
weavers.
is
that.
I'm just
Yeah.
wondering.
He's a singer.
I know. I say that as a joke. I'm like, well, I can't say that.
Right.
'Cause, yeah.
And that's been 14 years running. We're doing our 41st show.
Wow.
September
Oh,
29th.
Congratulations.
Amazing.
Thank you.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep.
This will come out in October, mid-October. So
Okay,
do you have
so-
October dates yet?
December 8th would be the next
December.
one. December 8th.
Gotcha.
At Miscast
got-
LA.
You got time to put it on your calendar, everybody. Check
Yes.
it out.
Please.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Awesome.
And my podcast.
Well.
Oh,
Am
in
I
the
allowed to?
podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And tell us, yeah, tell us,
I mean,
yeah,
we-
tell us
we-
about your
Right out
podcast.
We referenced
Please.
it, but it's called Make Me a Nerd with Mandy Kaplan. And yeah, I'm on the journey to discover nerd culture because I really held it at arm's length my whole life. So now I'm getting into some sci-fi and fantasy and video games and comics and trying it all with wonderful people like you who are willing to expose me to it. I have to stop using the word expose when I explain it because
Yes.
it just jumps out inappropriate.
Yes.
And that is, my podcast is a true story production. And you can find it wherever you podcast. Make Me a Nerd.
Fantastic. Yeah. You mentioned that you had a conversation with Pete about Buckaroo Banzai on there.
Across
So,
the Eighth
lots of good
Dimension.
stuff.
Good.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
The
you gotta
Adventures
get
of
the whole
Buckaroo
title of it.
Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension.
Look at
Uh-huh.
that. Look
Nailed
at
it.
that.
And then you're coming up. And
Yes.
And I'm coming up. Yeah, we'll be talking about The Last Starfighter, which should be a fun one to dig into. Yeah. Pete just laughs.
I can't wait.
Oh, do
Well,
you listen,
everybody-
Pete? Do you listen to the podcast?
I will, as a teaser, I'm in the middle of editing your Doctor Who episode. Oh my goodness, Mandy, what a property.
She watched all 500 episodes.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm just saying that. I have no idea how. I'm so far from a fan. I have no idea even how many episodes there are. But I know
Well, I
it's
watched
a
them
lot.
all.
You
All
watched
of them are
every
watched,
one of
yes.
them. Every Doctor.
Great conversation.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Wow.
Super fun.
Well, we will have the links in the show notes. Again, we certainly appreciate you joining us here today. For everyone else out there, we hope you like the show and certainly hope you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like. Movies We Like is a part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network and the Next Reel family of film podcasts. The music is Chonk Clap by Out of Flux. Find the show at truestory.fm and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at The Next Reel. Learn about becoming a member at thenextreel.com/membership. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we always appreciate it if you drop one in there for us. See you next time.